We're the two teachers. Welcome to Citizen U.
LIVEstyle. Tonight, we're reviewing the presidency.
You know the presidency is one of my favorite topics because everybody knows the president, right? The question is, how well do we know the institution of the executive branch? That's what we're here to review tonight. What questions do you guys have?
Well, Mr. Larson, how do you become a president?
Oh, boy. I'm glad that you looked at me. How do I become president? Well, we know there's some constitutional...
Well, are you 35? Are you at least 35
Well,
years old?
you've got to be 35. You've got to be...
Are you at least a 14-year resident?
I am a 14-year resident,
And
at least 35, and a natural-born citizen. So let me talk a little bit about how I might become president. The bad news is somebody's got to mention you as a potential presidential candidate. This is an important first step. But let's not forget that it's a long process and a lot of money is required. Iowa becomes the opening gate, the Iowa caucus. Front-loading.
Iowa, New
And
Hampshire primary.
people begin campaigning for that Iowa caucus 2 years in advance. You might need $25 million just to put your name in the hat. So becoming president involves a whole lot more than just, hey, I've got an issue and I want to be on the ballot. You also need to be nominated by a major political party. And this isn't easy either.
And then once you're nominated, you compete in the Electoral College. And remember, the Electoral College essentially is 51 different elections, 50 states plus Washington, D.C. And each of those states has electoral votes up for grabs. Almost all of them have a winner-takes-all system for their electoral votes. So there's a competition to see who wins those individual states. The magic number is 270. If Mr. Larson can win 270 electoral votes, he's Mr. President. If he can't, he's a loser.
Say, but what happens if the Electoral College doesn't hit 270?
Well, we know if no candidate wins a majority of the Electoral College, the House of Representatives picks the president, which has happened a few times, but not recently.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Larson, I also had a question on a vocab word in reference with the presidency. It's the bully pulpit. What exactly does that mean?
You know how I love metaphors. And the bully pulpit is that idea that the president's greatest power rests not in the constitutional powers. The formal powers aren't all that impressive, right? When you look at the president's powers in the Constitution, you'd say, see, the president, or is he just a clerk? But boy, do we know the president today is powerful. Those informal powers give the President of the United States so much power, some might say he's the most powerful person in the world. And what is his number one power that he has? The bully pulpit. The bully pulpit allows the president to speak to you out there, speak to the public opinion and manipulate it. He's out there shaking hands. He's out there, wherever the president goes, the cameras follow. And he can go out to Iowa today and start talking about agriculture, and he's moving agricultural policy. He can go out to New York City and talk about education and move education policy. The President of the United States is powerful today, not so much because of what the Constitution says, but because of those informal powers to bargain and manipulate public opinion in a positive way.
It used to be that powerful personalities like Teddy Roosevelt using the bully pulpit would be powerful, but if you had a shy president, that they would be less powerful. But we know now, at this point in U.S. history, the power of the presidency has been institutionalized. It doesn't matter whether it's a really aggressive personality or a shy personality. Whoever goes in the White House as president is going to be powerful.
Okay, so talking about powers, I was just confused about what's the difference between executive order and executive agreement?
It's a great question. We know that, particularly with divided government, it is hard for Congress to pass laws. It is even harder for for the Senate to ratify treaties. And so what presidents have increasingly done, particularly over the last 50 years, is use executive orders, which have the power of domestic law, because they're essentially, as the chief executive, they're telling the federal bureaucracy to carry out a certain action that has the power of law. Maybe it was allowing gays to serve in the military first. Maybe it was, during World War II, was the Japanese internment, where FDR ordered the Department of War to intern Japanese along the West Coast. Those are examples of executive orders. Executive agreements are agreements that a president makes with a foreign head of state. And increasingly, because treaties are so difficult to get ratified by 2/3 of the Senate, the presidents have to sometimes negotiate with foreign heads of state and come up with an executive promise, an executive agreement that's carried out for the duration of their presidency.
And Achint, these are two examples of exactly what we were talking earlier about, how the president acts informally. The Constitution doesn't say anything about executive orders or executive agreements, but here are two cases where the President of the United States can essentially pass a law on his own, an executive order, or pass a treaty on his own, unilaterally, an executive agreement, without Congress getting involved. This makes the president extremely powerful.
Okay. Another question about vocabulary with the presidency. What exactly is the State of the Union speech?
Well, the president is both head of government because he's the chief executive and implements laws, but he's also head of state. Other countries have a monarch as head of state, but we have one person serving both functions. As head of state, he represents the American people. And as Mr. Larson was saying, has the power to shape public opinion if he's a powerful head of state. Part of being head of state is also delivering State of the Union address. The Constitution demands that the president annually deliver a message to Congress. This used to be a written message, but because of TV, because presidents realize with TV the power to shape public opinion, they now deliver that speech to both chambers of Congress, live on TV, and this is where they set their agenda for the coming year. And this is the number one place in late January or early February where a president annually tries to shape public opinion.
Awesome. I was just confused between what are the formal powers and informal powers of the president.
Well, again, this is a really important distinction. The formal powers are what the Constitution specifically and explicitly gives to the president. He's commander-in-chief. He gets to appoint judges to the Supreme Court. He gets to appoint ambassadors. He likes to receive ambassadors from foreign countries. These are the formal powers. Not very impressive. It's those informal powers that gives the president that power today.
Okay. Does the president have a power to veto anything?
Well, he's chief legislator, so he can shape legislation as it's going through Congress. He can try to work with his party as chief of party to try to set the legislative agenda. But then in the end, he is the person who approves legislation by signing it within 10 days of it being presented to him by Congress, or he can veto that legislation, which means to reject it. The only thing Congress can do if the president rejects their legislation is to overturn that veto with 2/3 of each chamber voting to overturn. That hardly ever happens.
And remember, the president is more than just one person. He's really just the face of the executive branch, the branch that's responsible for enforcing the laws. If we, the people, want something, somebody's got to do it, and it's the executive branch that does it. Say, we've been reviewing the presidency. We're the two teachers. No fancy words.
No fancy suits.
Plain talk about issues you need to know.
Just in time.